We're now going to work through chapters 8 and chapter 16 as we talk about safety and liability. Let's turn back to the NFLA performance standards so we can talk about class design and professionalism. During this webinar, we will talk about number 4. The aquatic exercise leader will demonstrate knowledge of professional conduct in a group exercise setting. The competencies for this include the scope of practice, understanding your code of conduct, understanding when you need to act as a resource and give people an option to move into working with another qualified professional, a dietitian, that sort of thing. Understand and identify the importance of health screening as it relates to your participants and your class. The ability to assess and address potential environmental safety issues. The ability to assess and address potential equipment safety issues. Recognizing the implications of any legal issues that may occur during your class. Identify common emergency procedures in the aquatic environment. Through this, we're going to talk about liability prevention, negligence, standard of care. We're going to explain the importance of insurance, certification, as well as continuing education for yourself. Discuss environmental hazards, waivers, and informed consent. Understand and talk about participant screening, how important it is, how it can be done. Common alignment errors. How do we cue people so that they are getting the most out of their exercise program and using that as a way to correct common errors even in their posture when they're not at exercise class. We're going to work on some exercise analysis, review some high-risk exercises, and talk about how to keep you safe as the instructor. When we look at liability prevention, we want to make sure that we are using the best way possible to avoid injury or liability and reduce risk in a number of different areas. To be liable means to be held responsible for an injury to a class participant. There's more information on page 283 of your textbook. So in class instruction, we want to make sure that we are qualified to teach the style and type of aquatic fitness that you're teaching. So for instance, if you are subbing in for an arthritis class and you haven't taken any workshops or certifications in arthritis, you are working outside of your scope. You are not qualified to be able to teach that type of class. We are not lifeguards. We do not teach lifeguarding or water safety practices other than a little bit in our first aid course. So it's important that you understand that the facility should have an on-site lifeguard on duty and also understanding what the emergency plan is that's in place. Sometimes in small pools, you're working with one participant or 10 participants and one lifeguard. You have to make sure that even if the lifeguard knows the drill and what should happen in an emergency, you should also know. What happens if the lifeguard is the one that falls and slips and hurts themselves? You need to be able to know where the equipment is so that you can help this person as well. Dangerous environmental conditions. The pool is a dangerous place, especially for people who are standing up on the deck. It's slippery, it's wet. There's tripping hazards like hoses and lane dividers that can be up on the deck. We have our chairs usually. They can tend to get in the way. They can be helpful, but they can also get in the way. There's a possibility of having faulty equipment. What about if there's poor water or air quality? Now this may or may not be your call, but at the same point it's important to understand what that looks like from a participant's perspective. So for instance, a couple of years ago we arrived at class and the water was 15 degrees cooler than it should have been. So instead of being a 29-degree pool, it was a 15-degree pool. So we had the conversation with our participants and said, you know, we could go in for a short amount of time. It wasn't that we couldn't go in, but it was going to be very cold. We decided against going in and let our participants know that we would be making up the class at a different date. But it was up to us to determine what that process looked like. Participant screening. Ensure that every participant completes a PAR-Q Plus and that they are apparently healthy enough to participate in the class. What happens if you have someone who says yes to one of the questions on the PAR-Q Plus? Might be a good time to pause this video and go and look at our channel and find the PAR-Q Plus video. It walks you through how to use it. It walks you through what to do if someone answers yes to one of the screening questions and what the process looks like from here on in. Insurance and waivers, you want to make sure that as an instructor you have professional liability insurance and that your students, if it's possible, sign a waiver or informed consent. So this would only be relevant if you were working for yourself, say you were renting space in a pool and you were running a class yourself. Otherwise, the organization that has hired you will provide some of those waivers. Usually the registration form will also have a form of that. Insurance, though, is extremely important. As long as you maintain your certification with the Manitoba Fitness Council and you are a member in good standing, you have the benefit of having liability insurance that covers you while you teach classes. Page 283, 284, and 285 in your textbook go into a little bit more detail in negligence and the standard of care. So negligence refers to either the failure to take action or an improper action. So for instance, if we saw someone in the back of the class that was bobbing up and down and obviously in distress, and we did nothing, that is negligence. If we see a hose that is across the path, we see someone coming who is not able to see that hose, and we don't take any action, either moving the hose out of the way or telling the person to watch their step, that could be viewed as negligence. When we look at standard of care, care by which the actions of a leader in a particular situation will be judged is that of a reasonable and prudent instructor in the same situation. So we can't all be expected to know exactly what should happen in each situation, but it has to be reasonable. Whatever you decide to do, however you decide to handle the situation, has to be a reasonable handle of this. So for instance, if you had someone in your class that slipped getting in the pool, we assumed that they had a broken leg. It looked like it was a very serious situation. If we had them sit off on the side of the pool and wait, until we were done a couple of classes, and then maybe we took them for coffee and then took them to the hospital, we would be judged. That would not be reasonable care that we would expect to have for our participants in our classes. So be reasonable. When we talked about the welcome a few webinars back, we talked about giving a description of the class. This is very important, and it also goes back to your professional concerns. So if you have a number of people that are in your class that should not be there because they are not apparently healthy, they have a number of medical conditions, or they haven't been cleared for exercise, could be something as big as, someone had hip replacement surgery and they had it a week ago and they decided that they would use your class to rehab in. This is not the right class for them. You want to make sure that you verbally inform your participants of conditions that may place participants at risk of injury if they were to participate. So for instance, if you had someone who had a shoulder issue, who'd had a shoulder issue in the past, and you are using the board and telling them that, so the kickboard or the flutter board, and you're having them push it in and out, you have to make sure that you tell them that if it feels uncomfortable, that they have an option. They don't have to use that board. They can use something else, or they can use no resistance. We want to make sure that we give general guidelines for safety posture modifications to increase or decrease intensity. Give your participants permission to choose these modifications without you having to tell them every single time. One of the challenges with an aquatic fitness class, or really any fitness class that's a group class, is that you have a range of abilities in the class. Some people are very competitive and they're going to want to keep up with their neighbor. But you want to make sure that you reiterate over and over and over again that people need to work at their own levels. They need to choose the modification. So lots of times I'll give 2 or 3 options for people who want to increase the intensity, people who might need to decrease the intensity, and then what the regular move looks like. We want to continually reinforce the participants' responsibilities to choose the appropriate level of exercise intensity for their level of health or fitness. It's all about how you word it. Make it seem like it is a choice so that they can feel that they're not just opting out of the exercise, they have something else to do. Insurance. Some facilities provide instructors with employee insurance. Make sure you have this in writing if they do have insurance for you. If purchasing your own insurance, some people like to purchase an additional insurance policy. Make sure you read the small print to ensure you are fully covered. In Manitoba, MFC insurance requires that each participant has completed a PAR-Q Plus and is apparently healthy and ready to participate. It also requires that you have your first aid and CPR currently up to date, as well as any outstanding renewals completed and your membership fees paid. Scope of practice. I think I talked about it just a few minutes ago, but talking about rehab, a lot of people think that rehab is a great way to have an exercise class in the pool. It is great, rehabbing in the pool, with a qualified professional who can work with someone who is in that rehab state of injury. We are working with apparently healthy individuals who are not rehabbing, who have been cleared and are ready for regular physical activity, even if it's a low level of physical activity. So diagnosing, treating, or giving expertise beyond your scope of practice will leave you not covered by the insurance policy. It's important to stay up to date with new information. We require that you get 18 continuing education credits every 3 years. These can be collected from attending conferences, watching webinars, completing online or practical courses, or even things that you find out in the community that seem like they are pertaining to health and wellness. There is an option for you to try and get some of these other items approved just by calling the Manitoba Fitness Council, giving us an idea of what it is that you're looking at taking. We can give you an idea if it's something that we would consider covering or something that's completely outside the scope of the Manitoba Fitness Council. Environmental hazards. The pool is a unique environment which has its own environmental hazards. Before each class, the aqua fitness instructor should ensure that the pool entry and exit are safe to use. So not only is the ladder intact, but you can get to it and it's not one that has a broken rung or anything like that. You also have to think about how to get people in and out of the pool. I've had one situation in my career where I had someone get in the pool and then we had a really hard time getting them out. They were unable to lift themselves up onto the pool ladder. So it's not a conversation that you want to necessarily have with people, but at the same point, know that that's something that may happen and you may have to have an alternate plan. Many pools have a ramp, so this is not an issue. People can walk in, walk out. We also need to make sure that any equipment that will be used during the class is free from damage and is safe to use. Now, pool equipment is notorious for having bites taken out of it. Pool noodles that are used for not only aquatic fitness but also for children's and youth swimming programs often have big tears in them. Now, if a pool noodle looks like it has a lot of bite marks and a lot of areas where it has become unstable, especially if someone you have is not as comfortable in the water, you want to make sure that you're not giving them that piece of equipment. We want to try and ensure that there's no additional tripping hazards on the deck. No extra equipment, pool toys, lifeguard equipment. Other thing that seems to pile up beside pool, pile of flip-flops. So those people who don't want to wear shoes in the pool often wear a pair of flip-flops to prevent any kind of things on their feet, also to give them a little bit of a grip when they're walking from the shower to the pool, but then they pile up on the side of the pool and can become a tripping hazard of their own. The water quality needs to be tested regularly. This is not your job, but at the same point, you need to make sure that the pool that you're using is safe to swim in and that any other maintenance issues like cleanliness to air quality are documented and reported to a supervisor so that they can be taken care of quickly. Want to make sure that their classes are not overcrowded. You should be able to see all the participants and they should be able to see you. Before you teach at a pool, make sure that you've had a chance to check where the drop-off point is in the pool. It is usually marked on the side, and you want to make sure that you understand how quickly the drop happens. Sometimes it's a very gradual depth increase, and sometimes it's pretty quick. Again, being able to communicate that to your participants is going to help them. Ask all new students about their comfort of swimming. Some participants attend aquatic fitness that cannot swim. Ensure you and the lifeguard know who these people are and give instructions on where they should locate themselves to you within the pool area. Environmental safety is very important. There's more information on page 125 of your manual. It is imperative to know the emergency protocols and specific considerations of your facility. This means knowing the emergency procedures if you teach in an unsupervised pool, having an action plan in place. It may be beneficial to practice mock exercise or emergency situations to instill confidence in any case that anything arises. One of the places that I teach in is actually a pool that's located in a school. So we've had a number of fire drills. So we talk about that at the beginning of every session, talk about what people need to do, because we can't allow them to go into the change room and get changed before we meet them out in the front lobby. That just would never do. That is not the proper drill. We've even had drills where they had pretended that someone had broken into the school, and in which case we had to go into the change room and be quiet. One of the challenges was that this was not a drill that we were familiar with. So when this happened, it kind of caught us off guard. But the second time, it definitely didn't. So after that initial time, we took the time to learn the drill, to understand what we were trying to accomplish with the drill, so that it could be communicated to all of our participants going forward, so that each time we get a new group, we will tell them about that so that they understand what we have to do in case of that emergency. In Canada, we have not had a lot of legal issue when it comes to fitness facilities and fitness classes, but it's still important to make sure that you have a signed contract indicating that voluntary abandonment of an individual's rights to file a lawsuit for any damages, including negligence. This is called a waiver. And informed consent is a little bit different. It informs participants of the risks and the responsibility for accepting those risks. So every exercise program has some risks. So even, as safe as you can be, telling people to wear shoes in and out, there still could be a possibility that they fall when they are going into the pool. So your informed consent would outline some of those issues so that people are very aware of what the issues could be by participating in your class. This picture may be a little bit fuzzy, but we want to make sure that we talk to people about the PARQ Plus. Some of the facilities here in Winnipeg have a poster up on the wall as participants walk in, and they're expected to read the poster, determine if they are apparently healthy by answering no to all the different questions. That helps you to figure out if your people have been screened for physical activity. If not, you can have them fill out a paper copy. You can also do a verbal PARQ. So you can ask the top questions in the block and have people answer them. If they answer yes, is when you would have them fill out a paper copy so that you make sure that you have caught anyone who may be not apparently healthy, who may have stumbled into your class. The other pieces that are available are called ePARMEDx and PARMEDx for pregnancy. So the ePARMEDx is what you would use if someone answers yes to one of these questions, and the best way to use it is online. It's available at www.eparmedx.com. Again, referring to the Manitoba Fitness Council's video on the PARQ Plus will help you understand this form, how to use it, and what to do if someone answers yes to one of the questions. Participant safety. Looking on page 128 of your textbook, there's more information. Progress gradually, cue proper form and range of motion before speed or intensity. Remind your participants to listen to their bodies and progress when it feels right. It might not be their first class. It might be their second class. It might be their third class. It's up to them to determine how fast they want to progress in your class, how they felt after, how they felt even the next day after the first class. That will help them determine how fast they want to move in your class. Cueing to press their heels down to prevent calf cramps, sores. Cue pressing the heels all the way down to the bottom of the pool. We're going to work on cueing for posture. That's coming up in a couple of slides. Water shoes give support and shock absorption for rebound exercises. Pool floors are normally concrete, and at waist deep, students can still feel 50% of their body weight. They also provide a non-slip or a less slippery surface as they move from side to side. I know in the pool that I work at a lot, there are often slippery spots in the pool. People with shoes don't tend to notice them. People without shoes definitely tend to notice them. Leaving class. Oftentimes during a class, a 1-hour class, we have people leaving the class. We want to make sure that they come and tell us either that they're going to be leaving or that they are leaving and why they're leaving. Lots of times they're taking a potty break, they'll get out of the pool, use the washroom, come back in, and everything's all good. But you want to understand, are they leaving because they don't feel well? Are they leaving because there's another issue? And the problem is that once they get into the change room, you can't see them anymore. So you can't see if there's an issue, and you want to be able to know if there's an issue so that you can respond to it appropriately. Page 129 has some further tips on how to help correct common movement mechanic errors, but we're going to get into that next slide. Positions in aquatic fitness can be different from working positions on land or in a land class, especially when it comes to standing. As you can see in this picture, we have a lady who's leaning slightly forward from the hip. So her shoulders are still over top of the hip, the head is still over top of the shoulders, but the legs are slightly behind the body. In this slight lean forward during drills like cross-country skiing, you can engage the core a little bit more, which helps to prevent lumbar lordosis because it supports from the water against the frontal plane. When we look at a hip hike, so where the arrow is pointed, when that foot moves up, the hips may shift slightly to the side. This is called a hip hike. Correct hip hikes and rotations may occur when balancing on one foot. This is okay. It's easy and commonplace for people to round their shoulders when they're exercising in the pool. They get a little bit relaxed, especially if the water's warm, and everything starts to rotate forwards and down. When we look at the picture on the left-hand side, we can see someone with a rounded shoulder posture. Her chin is coming forward, her arms are moved towards the front, and she is also experiencing, looks like potentially a posterior pelvic tilt. When you look at squaring off the shoulders, pulling the shoulders up, back, and down can help people set up for proper shoulder posture when it comes to resistance training exercises. There should be a horizontal line across the shoulders. Help people by cueing them so that they can help correct imbalances that they may have or may have been developing. Neutral pelvis is important to cue, especially during movements like hamstring curls. You want to ensure that the tailbone draws downwards towards the lower abdomen and is engaged to prevent lordosis. So you can see in the other two examples, we have an anterior pelvic tilt where the hips are pointed or rotated towards the front, the posterior pelvic tilt where the tummy might be stuck out and the bum may be stuck out. Again, being able to identify these and helping people find that neutral pelvis. Maybe you talk about the cup of water where they have their hands on their hips and they're rotating forward and back, trying to find that spot where they think if their pelvis was a cup of water, it would stop pouring out either the front or the back. One position that can be really challenging for exercising in a pool environment is in the supine position. So the face is up. You can see the lady in the picture has got her hair down in the water. She's using the noodle to hold up the neck and support it. A lot of ladies don't want to do this. A lot of ladies come, they have their hair all done. They do not want to get it wet. So you end up getting neck pain because they're trying to keep their head up out of the water. If this is the case, allow them to drop their legs down more in front or maybe underneath the body so that they can still get the exercise done without getting the pain in the neck. Exercise analysis is just as important in the pool as it is on land. How do we make sure we are analyzing the exercises correctly and that we have safety built into the exercises? What we want to ask ourselves, is this exercise safe for my participants? Can they maintain a neutral spine and stabilization during the exercise? If the answer is no, this is probably the wrong exercise for your group. Is it effective? What is the desired outcome of the exercise? What are we trying to accomplish? How is the overload achieved? Is there a better way to target this muscle? So for instance, one of the things that some people do for triceps is they take a noodle down behind the back and they push it up and down, up and down. Anyone who's had any kind of a shoulder issue at some point, that is going to be a very precarious exercise for them and maybe very ineffective and also inappropriate. Appropriateness refers to the functionality of an exercise. Will this exercise improve the quality of their lives? When we look at exercises, we look at risk versus reward. What is the risk to the body and what is the potential reward? If the reward is not much higher than the risk, or if the reward does not eliminate the risk, then maybe it's the wrong exercise for your group. One of my fitness leaders once said to me, "There are no bad exercises, just bad applications." On page 136 of your textbook, we talk about contraindicated moves. Contraindicated moves are those exercises which place the participant at a greater risk of injury than benefit from doing the exercise. Now, you are going to have people in a class that things are appropriate for, and you're going to have people that that same exercise is completely inappropriate for. There is an opportunity here in the textbook, page 136 and 137, to look at concerns and suggestions for common aqua fitness exercises. So it talks about the movement concern, what the area of the risk potentially is that's involved, and what are some things that we can do to change it up so that it makes it more relevant and safer for the participants that we have in our classes. How good is an aqua fitness class without an aqua fitness instructor? Not good at all. That's why we need to make sure that we talk a little bit about instructor safety. We want to make sure that we wear appropriate footwear. So depending on if you are going in the water, if you're going on the deck, you should be wearing running shoes. They allow for cushioning and support. The pool deck, you have to think it's like a big cement pad. So if you are jumping on it or you're walking on it a lot, it can be hard on the knees, it can be hard on the hips, and you want to make sure that you take care of yourself. Use a teaching mat whenever possible. Look for one that has grip and shock absorption. There's a number of them out there. Some of them are kind of expensive. If you're looking for information on how to find one, you can again call us at the Manitoba Fitness Council. We can help you with that. When we are doing any kind of jumps or supine exercises that are hard to demonstrate, instead of trying to do them in midair, it makes way more sense to do them using a chair. So sitting down in the chair, showing what the move would look like, then coming back to the side of the class and cueing individual people or group common techniques that you can tell them about so that they can understand what the movement looks like, because it definitely will look different in the chair on the pool deck than in the water. We want to make sure that you take care of yourself by not burning out. Schedule break weeks, set boundaries on the numbers of classes that you teach. I know once you get certified as an aquatic fitness instructor, there's going to be a lot of people calling you. Probably I'm going to be one of them, who's going to call you and say, there is this great class opening, at this pool at this time. They really need an instructor like you. But you have to be real and you have to think about what you can do in your own life. Most fitness instructors teach anywhere from 5 to 10 classes a week. There are some that teach more, there are some that teach less, but you have to figure out what works for you, your family, your timeline, and your body. We don't talk enough about vocal strain. The pool is a very noisy environment. The pool that I teach at, it's noisy. We're the only ones in it, but with the water noise, the big echoey room, the music, there's a lot of competition for my voice. So we want to make sure that we do the best job that we can by not overusing our vocal cords and creating something called vocal strain. Again, if you're looking for more information on this, we do have a webinar on voice health on the Manitoba Fitness Council website. What can we do otherwise? We can try and avoid loud music. We can try and use concise cues so that we're not talking so much. We can give people a lot more visual opportunities to see what we're doing and not talk as much. You can position yourself so that they can hear you. So for instance, one of the places that I like to stand is kind of over closer to where the participants are in my class. They're about halfway back in the pool. So it doesn't make sense always for me to stand at the front of the pool and talk to them about what we're doing next or how to cue the next move when I could be closer to them so that they can hear me better and I don't have to strain my voice. You can also speak during instrumental moments in the music. You can also turn the music down a little bit to give them verbal cues if that's what you need to do. Use proper breathing techniques. Make sure that you have good posture so that when you are on the pool deck, that you are also being safe with your body and demonstrating what you want your participants to do by being in the correct posture. Try to relax your head, jaw, and neck. And finally, try to drink as much water as possible. It'll be great for your voice, it'll hydrate your vocal cords, it'll make you feel good, and remember the pool is often a very warm environment to work in. So we want to make sure that we take care of ourselves as much as possible.